Hello and welcome to the program this week. I'm Layo Adegoke. Let's begin today by taking a look at some of the stories that made headlines over the weekend.
On Sunday, Egypt began vaccinating frontline medical staff against COVID-19 using the jab developed by China National Pharmaceutical Group, Sinopharm. The vaccine is to be provided free of charge, first to all doctors and frontline workers treating coronavirus patients, then to other medical workers, senior citizens and people with chronic illnesses. Health Minister Hala Zaid previously said Egypt was expecting 40 million doses via the Gavi Vaccine Alliance, covering 20 million of the country's 100 million population. She said on Sunday that the country had secured an additional 40 million vials from one company and 20 million from another, without specifying their origin, but bringing the total to 100 million doses. On Saturday, hundreds of people marched in central Tunis against inequality and police brutality in defiance of a ban on demonstrations and as security forces tried to block off the city's main central avenue. Protesters chanted, "The people want the fall of the regime," a chant popularized during the so-called Arab Spring in 2011, and held up banners and slogans decrying the security response to more than a week of demonstrations and nightly clashes between youths and police in cities across Tunisia. While the youths clashing with riot police after dark in poor districts of Tunisian cities have voiced few clear political aims, daytime protests have focused on the lack of jobs and on the police response to demonstrations. Still on Saturday, a total of 36 migrants, including 3 children, arrived at Aguinagan in Gran Canaria after being rescued at sea by Spanish emergency services. Spain's Canary Islands archipelago has seen hundreds of migrants reaching its shores in the last few days, intensifying the pressure on the regional government to provide proper shelter. Many migrants were carried off the boats by emergency services in protective gear and required medical attention. In Mozambique on Saturday morning, Cyclone Eloise made landfall in the central region, hitting an area already submerged by floodwaters and still recovering from Cyclone Idai less than 2 years ago. Eloise, fueled by the warm Indian Ocean waters of the Mozambique Channel, gained tropical cyclone status with its strength equivalent to a Category 2 storm. The World Meteorological Organization says the storm pummeled the region with hurricane-force winds and heavy rains.
Meanwhile, the death toll from Mozambique's storm Eloise now stands at 12, according to figures from authorities across southeastern Africa. The storm has also now been downgraded to a tropical depression. Eloise wrecked thousands of buildings, ruined crops and displaced almost 7,000 people in Mozambique, and also damaging some parts of South Africa over the weekend. The South African Weather Service has announced a red level 10 warning for eastern parts of Limpopo and Mpumalanga due to expected persistent heavy rain. According to forecaster Lethlo Honolo Tobela of the SA Weather Service, the country should expect an upper air system which could hit on Tuesday, bringing along more heavy rains. Eloise also affected some parts of Zimbabwe, and at least 3 people were swept away when they tried to cross flooded rivers in eastern Zimbabwe.
Cyclone is actually called an ex-Eloise now because it's no longer a cyclone anymore. It was downgraded and became a tropical depression. And as we speak now, it's located over the borders of northwest and southwestern parts of Limpopo. It has moved further and it's moving westwards, expected to move over the Namibian border and South African border by tomorrow. And the main concern about the system right now is heavy rain, disruptive rain, and which is why South African Weather Service issued a level 10 warning of disruptive rain, and it's considered to be downgraded today, or rather late afternoon, into level 4, but still disruptive rain over areas of the northern KZN, Lowveld of Mpumalanga and Limpopo, and it's expected to be reduced to level 4 due to obviously the less impact as it has moved southward.
Now, the body of former Ghanaian President Jerry Rawlings is lying in state in the capital, Accra. For people who want to pay their respect, authorities say strict COVID-19 protocols are in place. Mr. Rawlings, who was Ghana's longest-serving leader, died in November 2020 at the age of 73 after a short illness. Funeral events officially started on Sunday with a church service and a vigil in the capital. Mr. Rawlings will be buried on Wednesday with a number of present and former heads of state in attendance. The funeral was supposed to have happened in November, but was postponed following disagreements among Ghana's political leaders. He led a military government in Ghana for more than a decade after staging 2 military coups in 1979 and 1981, but returned the country to multi-party democracy in 1992. Well, let's get more on this story from Joy News TV correspondent Araba Kumsin, who joins us now live from the venue. Hello, Araba. Give us a feel of what the mood is like, even as former President Jerry Rawlings lies in state.
But there's a lot of drumming and dancing here. It's a cultural display, part of our culture when someone passes. And so there's a lot of drumming and dancing here at the Accra International Conference Center, where Mr. Rawlings is being laid in state. Now, the mood here is very somber, and understandably so. Mr. Rawlings was an icon. He was described as many as the man of the people. And so it's understandable that a lot of people will troop in here to pay their last respect to the man who just wanted, his only desire was to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. So today, we've seen leaders of the political parties as well as the ordinary members of Mr. Rawlings' own party, the NDC, trooping in here to take a last glimpse of his body before he gets eventually buried. So we've been seeing dignitaries passing through. A lot of them go through, watch the body, and emerge with tears in their eyes. And so it's been a very somber day.
Now, we understand, just like you said, the burial will be on Wednesday. Help us understand, the plans for this event, especially during this COVID-19 era.
Well, the organizers of the funeral, as well as government, acknowledge that there's been a rise in the number of COVID cases. And so, therefore, the arrangements have taken all that into consideration. We're told that a specified number will be allowed at the funeral grounds. There'll be a perimeter between which no one can go beyond. And also, there'll be strict protocols to be followed. And so, as much as possible, government is urging a lot of the people to stay at home and watch the proceedings on television rather than make their way to the Independence Square where the burial service is expected to take place. But government has assured, as well as the family and the organizers of the funeral, that all COVID protocols will be observed strictly. And so, as part of the measures, the media will not be expected to go beyond a certain limit. Even the media have been given some restrictions. So we won't be going close to the body or close to the ceremony proper. There will be a media village set up for journalists and media men to take the feed. And generally, the general public, the invited guests, will be sitting in the stands. And of course, there will be social distancing as well, as far as we're concerned.
All right, then, Araba Kumsin, the editor of Joy News TV in Accra, Ghana. Thank you for your reporting. Now, moving on, every year the world observes International Day of Education on January the 24th to identify and proffer solutions to the challenges in the education sector globally. Now, with the coronavirus pandemic since last year, the challenge with education globally has widened as 265 million children and adolescents around the world lack complete access to school, and 4 million children and youth refugees remain out of school. Well, joining us now on the program to speak to the gaps in sub-Saharan Africa education sector is Howard Douglas, a director at a UK-based community interest company, WRBLO. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let me begin by asking, what's your understanding of the state of education today in Africa, the severe impacts of COVID-19, and how urgent is this call for action?
Okay, so from what I've physically seen, the state of education, particularly for the poor in Africa, is frankly dismal. And for the most part, not, in my opinion, fit for purpose. That is even before we consider the impact of COVID-19. Year by year, World Education Day is celebrated, and rightly so for some, as we can see and appreciate the modernization and the measurable progress of various African economies, but not so for the poor, for orphans or unwanted children who are being increasingly neglected and left behind. COVID-19, in fact, may actually be a catalyst that draws our attention and a call to action to the way we discriminate against those, particularly at ground zero of poverty.
Now, what would you say are the possible solutions to these challenges that you've highlighted?
Well, we cannot expect to see the exponentially positive change that Africa is bursting to reveal unless we adopt an Africa-centered, innovative, inclusive, and productive model of education. That model needs to rival the tired, conventional post-colonial systems that Africa has inherited. WRBLO is developing a holistic curriculum to be delivered through smart, safe, innovative hubs. And these hubs will be designed to produce revenue. And by that token, children can be incentivized and appropriately rewarded during the precious cycle of child development and set on their chosen path to eventually become productive adult citizens within their specialisms, whether they be academic, vocational, digital, agricultural, or indeed entrepreneurial.
All right, then, so much to discuss, but we'll have to just keep it there. Thank you so much, Howard Douglas, director at the UK-based community interest company WRBLO. Thank you for joining us on the program.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
A Ugandan court has ordered the military and police to leave the home of opposition politician Bobi Wine. He has not left his house in the outskirts of the capital, Kampala, since voting in the presidential elections 11 days ago, in which he was declared runner-up to President Yoweri Museveni. Monday's ruling by the High Court in Kampala comes after petition by Bobi Wine's lawyers. The state argued that it needs to prevent him from organizing protests, but the High Court has now ruled that Bobi Wine's detention is unlawful, with Justice Michael Eblubu telling the court it was also an infringement on his personal liberties. U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to reimpose a travel ban that Donald Trump lifted just days before his term ended. The restrictions, expected to be reinstated later today, would apply to non-U.S. citizens traveling from South Africa and Brazil, which are facing new variants of coronavirus. Travelers from the UK, Ireland, and 26 other European countries are also expected to be banned. The Trump administration's decision to lift the travel ban, which had been in place since last March, was criticized by President Biden's press secretary, Jen Psaki, who had tweeted that the incoming government didn't intend to abide by the change. On Sunday, Channel's television crew visited the Yaba Infectious Disease Hospital here in Lagos, Nigeria, where COVID-19 patients are being taken care of. The center is a 350-bed facility where victims of coronavirus are being managed. The visit shows an increase in demand of medical attention and oxygen by patients. Our correspondent, Olu Phillips, tells us more.
A typical day in the bustling city of Lagos, the commercial nerve center of Nigeria, as people make their way through the day amidst a terrible pandemic that keeps threatening the economy and well-being of nations, including Nigeria. Findings show that it's still a mixed bag of adherence to protocols aimed at slowing the disease. And what do you know are the preventive measures for keeping away corona from you?
You wash your hands, use your sanitizer, your nose mask.
But you're not using one. To underscore the dangers associated with unprotected lifestyle, our crew is visiting one of the most active biosecurity complexes in Nigeria, an infectious disease center in Yaba. Before the tour, we are briefed by the State Commissioner of Health, Dr. Bayami, about this complex, which he says is full of COVID patients.
The place is full of COVID-19. You're either a patient diagnosed with COVID-19 or you're a relative. We are likely to be, the chances that the relatives of the patients are positive are high. The place is full of medical personnel, many of which are infected. Some of them know it, some of them don't know it. And of course, there are people coming in for testing as well who do not know their status.
This facility is an integrated workplace housing units like the Emergency Operations Center, Intensive Care Unit, Routine Lab, Biobank, Oxygen Complex, Mortuary, Engineering Department, and Crematorium. Essentially, it's an end-to-end treatment and research facility. As we walk through the pathways and to various sections and blocks, including several isolation wards, the reality hits you as you see relatives locking quietly outside the blocks where they have loved ones. Unfortunately, they have to wait and pray. We are warned again about the potential risk of everyone in this vicinity to be a carrier, including health practitioners. Some people have come in randomly or by reference to conduct a COVID test, which for safety reasons and for exigencies of reducing viral load is done in the open. Again, that's a reminder that COVID-19 do exist in our society. While the result is being processed, the eco-tele doctors and data miners keep a rigid track here and from centers across the state. The process is for record keeping and monitoring for several reasons, including treatment and recovery process. Mild and asymptomatic patients are managed remotely, while critical cases are retained here. COVID-19 is a sickness that presents pathogens of high consequences. The second wave has seen an increase in demand of oxygen due to respiratory failure. Statistics from this center shows that the demand for oxygen has risen from 60 large cylinder bottles daily to about 300 owing to high record of cases, to which the government has responded swiftly by installing these embedded oxygen plants to meet the rising demand. This is the ICU unit, and 2 patients are currently on ventilators. We are told the longer, the lower the chances. Prayers for them.
Every second we can see what is happening here.
There are real patients, real Nigerians currently receiving treatment, as we will show you shortly. You can't mess around here, so we have to don the right apparel. Yes, the air in there is filtered, but we are told the virus is active. Here we go. Sounds from oxygen bottle fusing around this ward as patients rely on them for life. All over this isolation ward are people fighting for their life. Incidentally, they are all on oxygen to aid breathing, Nigerians and foreigners alike. To underscore the consequences of the situation, some patients opted to have their identities on camera.
I from yesterday that I was moved into this facility at Yaba. I know there is COVID and people should protect themselves very well. It is real. And I pray for Nigerians that God Almighty should take COVID away from us.
Before, I never go out with people at their house. After I go this test, I confirm I come here.
So, some people think COVID, no COVID.
No, it's there.
Huh?
It's there.
So tell people that think there's no COVID, that this is real.
It's true, it's there. Coronavirus is there.
In the last 48 hours, 10 people were wheeled out of this place because they lost the battle. This is a 76-bed male ward isolation center here in Yaba. And the doctors tell me that in the last 2 weeks, it's been very hectic managing the health crisis of many Nigerians who have come in here. 50 mortality has been recorded in the last 2 weeks, and it is owing to just that sickness called COVID-19.
First, you want to overcome the problem of is real, is not real. And I think we are overcoming it. More and more people are now aware that COVID-19 is real because more and more people close home are falling for the disease.
From this center of over 250 beds, many have recovered. Sadly also, close to 100 have died. But that's not all. There's also a growing trend of post-COVID survival syndrome, which presents problems in the heart, intestines, and so on. But the health commissioner says we really don't want people on ventilators. Staying safe and taking personal responsibility is the key. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
Please take personal responsibility. That's it on the program for today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Adigoke.